99% of podcasters just really aren't making money podcasting. And so what I want to do is find people that had success and share with the world what's really making them successful.
Hi guys, welcome back to Behind the Perfect Startup podcast. We have Tony Guarnaccia with us today, and he is running his own successful podcast and two other businesses. So, hi Tony, how are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me on today. Appreciate it.
So, how are you, Tony?
Doing great. Yeah, it's a beautiful day down here in Austin. Enjoying the weather. It's nice and warm, and just getting ready for the Christmas break, and the kids will be home, so we'll be gearing up for all that. So lots going on.
That sounds lovely. So, Tony, why don't you go ahead and give a brief introduction about yourself and your company to the audience?
Yeah. So my history kind of goes back to when I was a kid. So when I was 12, my parents opened a bakery, and they were fantastic bakers, but unfortunately didn't know everything that they know about running a business. So unfortunately that business closed, and we lost literally everything: the house, the car, had to give up my dog even. But what I learned is that kind of set the foundation for the rest of my life, my career, in that it kind of propelled me to entrepreneurship, because I kind of wanted to fix the past in a sense. And so I went to college, learned entrepreneurship, and at that time, after I graduated, left and started a second bakery, and that bakery was one of the first online bakeries. And so we were able to take a cake, mail it across the country, and even put a photo on it. And so from that, we were able to get celebrities like Jennifer Lopez and Jay-Z. We worked with major corporations, and just did kind of personalized food, cookies, cakes, things of that nature. But what I learned is, even though we had amazing product, great SEO, corporate clients and celebrities and all this, it still wasn't necessarily everything I needed to know. And so that business surprisingly also failed for a variety of reasons. And so that kind of put me in my next journey, which was to work with the best companies in the world. So I ended up working with everyone from Ford to ADP to Google. And really what I wanted to do was learn what made them successful. So I did that for about a decade and left to start my own businesses from there, a marketing agency to help grow market leaders. And then I found out that a lot of small businesses were missing fundamental things, which is why they also were struggling. So I started a training company to help that. And now most recently, I'm bringing those same kind of skills of helping entrepreneurs really become profitable. And now I'm doing that in the podcasting world. So my new mission is to make podcasting profitable. So I started a software company called Castocity to help do that.
So it looks like you are an expert at fusing things together. If it's baking and personalization and now podcast and marketing, it sounds amazing. And I have to get to this question, Tony. You have worked with and grown over 10,000 small businesses and a dozen of Fortune 500 companies. And back in 2009, you earned the reputable title of Google Partner of the Year. Is there anything else we're missing out on?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, when you've been around as long as I have, and you get to do quite a lot of interesting things. So the Google partner was a very special one, because back then it was kind of, ours was just starting. So I was there at the very beginning, and really what drove that is the power of partnerships. And so I did a partnership basically with the agency I was in. It was a subsidiary of a very large enterprise. We did a partnership with Google and with Ford. And those partnerships are really what caused it to grow. And I coined that term co-marketing, which is where two different entities help each other. This could be a strategic alliance. It could be a joint venture program. And what I discovered is a lot of small businesses are missing that. And that's why I decided part of my mission to make podcasting profitable is to bring that same kind of idea of co-marketing to podcasters. So for instance, I'm on this show. A great way for you to grow your audience is if I promote being on your show. And likewise, I can grow my kind of authority and trust and influence by you marketing me being on the show. most businesses, most podcasters don't have the mechanism to do that. And so what my software does, it automates the creation of all the social media posts, all the blog content, things like that to support both of the entities, the guest and the host.
That's an amazing concept. I love it. So you are a host of your own podcast. You run a successful digital marketing and a small business growth strategy company. You're into music too. So tell me, Tony, when is DC signing you up for the next Superman movie?
Oh, who knows? I don't know about that. But yeah, music has always been a passion of mine. It really ties into a lot of things in business. So I learned kind of a lot of discipline through music. One of the things I learned with most entrepreneurs is they just kind of want to get results yesterday, super quick. But there takes a certain amount of discipline. Like you have to have a level of planning. And I first learned that through music, because when I went to music school, I just kind of wanted to rush through a piece of music. And that's why I learned from my teacher that you have to break it down and take it step by step to kind of get to be actually know the piece, and not just, like most beginning students, they just kind of rush through. And so that's something I've carried with me throughout my life in any discipline, no matter what I'm doing, that you have to kind of break it down and not rush ahead. At the same time, you have to take action, but you really kind of have to be diligent. And that's what I learned with playing the violin. That was my music major.
That's really nice. And it sure is taking you places. So, Tony, can you please tell our listeners a little more about your podcast and what kind of stuff do you talk about?
Yeah, so I started, actually I have a new one coming out. It's called, I'm still working on the title, but it's probably going to be something along the lines of Podcast Profit Club. And what I've done is I've interviewed the top 150 people in podcasting to ask them how they've made podcasting profitable, because unfortunately, 99% of podcasters just really aren't making money podcasting. And so what I want to do is find people that had success and share with the world what's really making them successful. And so I've interviewed people from top hosting companies, from top affiliate marketers, joint venture experts, sales experts, sponsorship experts. So it's not just within the podcasting world, it's people outside of that. And what we're really doing is breaking down the top 10 ways to make money in podcasting and talking to those experts in the space, even if they don't even have a podcast, because they may know a lot outside of that space.
Oh, I love this idea. I'm sure it's going to be a huge hit. So moving on, Tony, would you like to give an advice to the small business owners in the audience, like about the things that you should never take lightly when it comes to business?
Well, always make sure and it sounds very simple, but you really want to understand your profitability and your cash flow. That's very, very important, because if you run out of money, even if you are profitable, you're going to be in trouble. And so I have a whole guide on that about preserving your cash flow. But really, and one of the things I wish, unfortunately, I learned this the hard way. A lot of my best lessons are the things I screwed up, but making sure you really have a hold of your bookkeeping, your accounting, and just really tracking what's going on, because if you're not measuring it, you're not going to be able to improve it.
That's right. Thank you for that. And Tony, how did you realize that podcast can grow impact and income for businesses, and how did you know that you wanted to do this full time?
Yeah, so what happened was I had a book. So I mentioned before a training company I had started, and what the training company was focused on is how to grow a business based on a framework I created for strategic planning. So basically, you can take your whole business, put it on a single piece of paper, even a whiteboard, and kind of map out your plan for the year so you can grow predictably. And so I had a book called Small Steps to Grow Profits. And that book explained the concepts in the book. And what do you do when you launch a book? A lot of us like to do a podcast tour. And so I went on E6 podcast last year to talk about this book. And that's why I realized that so many podcasters were struggling. And that's why I thought, this would be a great area to grow into, because they have a big need, and also podcasts are exploding. And so that's why I decided to go into that market with a software company.
That's really inspiring. And I'm glad you found podcasting, and I'm sure other small companies are thankful too.
Yes.
Tony, you've recently moved to Austin. How is Austin treating you?
It's great. So one of the things I thought about, like many of us through this pandemic, is, what do I really want in life? what can what can be better, what can change. And I coined the term kind of re-engineering. So I re-engineered my life. So I essentially shut down my marketing agency to focus full time really on this podcasting niche with the software and everything else I have going on. And so I reduced the staff I was working with. I moved with a family. I have a family of 8, so it's myself, my wife, and 6 kids, and pets, and everything else, and did something radical. And interesting enough, I've never even been to this part of the country, but I knew there was a lot of opportunity here. Podcasting's big, as is software, and so we just kind of made the leap, and we're glad we did. We've never been happier. And sometimes you just kind of step out in faith and do something big. To get a big change, you have to make a big change. So that's what we did.
So that sounds amazing. And I'm curious, how does Christmas for a family of 8 look like?
It's a little chaotic. It's going to be a little different this year because we're not around all of our family that we're up in the Northeast. So that's where we came from. But it's a fun age because we have a lot of little ones and they are so excited for Christmas, and the older ones, they like it too. But it's really the magic of, we basically have all the kids at the top of the staircase. We count the 3 and they all come flying down and they're run me over basically. But it's a lot of fun.
Sounds lovely. So it's going to be amazing Christmas this year as well. Now, moving on, Tony, how did you find digital marketing, and how did you decide to move forward with it?
Yeah, so digital marketing, my career starts way back when, but I was fortunate enough to be very early in with search engine optimization, SEO. And that happened way back with that cake business because I didn't have a lot of money to promote the online bakery. And so I thought what better way was through SEO because it was free. And so I learned it. I was starting to do SEO in the late 90s. That's how long I go back in that. And so I started doing it when I was in college and learned a lot, and then was fortunate enough that became a great entryway to work with those 10,000 businesses in Fortune 500, because back in the day, they didn't have that skill set. I mean, there's a ton of people now, but I was one of the first doing it. And so much so that I couldn't even find a job in SEO at first because nobody even knew what it was. But it really opened a lot of doors. And what I learned is you want to kind of ride the wave, find out what's hot and try to jump in on that area, which is really what I'm doing with podcasting. Is the next big thing. Although it's been around for a while, it's really kind of hitting its stride now. And so, I did that with SEO. I did that with Google AdWords, which was how I became the agency of the year. Social media. I didn't do as much with social media. I kind of missed that wave, to be honest. Doing more now. And then podcasting is another one. So always try to kind of see where the proverbial puck, as Wayne Gretzky would say, see where the puck's going, and then go to that space and be there in anticipation. And a lot of times you don't even have to be the best person. You have to be in the right area at the right time, and you can have success. Now, if you're great, it'll be that much better for you.
That's right. And it's so amazing to know that you were one of the first people to actually look into SEO and have that knowledge. So I'm sure you have learned a lot over the years. And would you like to share any marketing advices for the people in the audience?
Yeah, well, I mean, my main thing before the podcasting was that framework, which I call the results loop. And it takes you through in just a few steps how to grow any company exponentially. And so where I always start is, especially if it's a new venture, it's different if it's established, but if it's new, you want to look at, okay, who's your ideal buyer? That's very important. You really have to be as specific as possible. Then really understand what products do you really need to provide them as specifically as possible. And then the third leg of this results loop is the value proposition. Why would they work with you as opposed to anyone else or do nothing at all? So that's really where it starts. And what I like to do is really kind of graph the products and services against the buyers and say, okay, what buyers can I offer new products and services? So for existing buyers. Then I can say, what new buyers can I attract? And which existing buyers can get new products and services. So you kind of make like a little 4-quadrant diagram, and really very quickly shows you kind of where the growth areas are. So that's the first 3 areas. Again, you got your buyers, you got your offers, which are your product and services, and then you have your value proposition. That's the first 3. The second 3 is really how do you grow new buyers, Then you look at how do you grow existing buyers and make them spend more. And then the third factor is how do you increase the loyalty. So if you go around the loop and look at those 6 factors, you can exponentially grow any business. And that's the exact framework I'm using for myself to grow Castocity, my podcasting software.
That's a really good advice. Thank you for that. And I'm sure everyone in the audience, including me, they have it's going to be very helpful for them. So I'm curious about this question, Tony. As a child, what were the traits that you had that helped you turn into the Tony you are today? And what did you think as a child that you would be when you grow up?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think curiosity is a big one. You have to kind of, to be an entrepreneur, I think you want to have a certain level of curiosity. I've always been pretty, I think with my training in music and business is really kind of the route I ended up going is I've always been a little bit analytical, but still being creative, kind of tapping into those. But the biggest thing is I learned from a childhood, again, probably because of my circumstances, is the value of resilience, which is really how you bounce back from adversity. Because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to fall flat on your face many, many times. And it's the ability to get back up and persevere and get through that is really what separates those that survive as an entrepreneur and those that just don't make it. And so I would say, perseverance through adversity is probably the biggest thing you can learn. And, in terms of where I wanted to go, I had different, like every kid as a little kid, I wanted to be the firefighter and the policeman. But as I grew up, I kind of really always, what's unusual about me is I kind of always have stayed on the path I've always loved, which is really music and business. To this day, I still will play violin gigs, at a wedding or event or something, or a musical. And then I still obviously apply business. So I've kind of stayed the course ever since I've probably been, 12, I've pretty much stayed the course with what I've always wanted to do, which has worked out.
That's really nice. And I'm sure you would have made an amazing firefighter. And it's really nice how you're taking both business and music together at the same time. It's really nice. So what would you say are your business plans for 2022?
Yeah, so my plan is really to start scaling up Castocity. So it's just really coming out beta now, getting it, some of the bugs worked out, getting a predictable funnel, like a sales and marketing funnel. So in other words, if I know I put so much money into advertisements, I'll get X many dollars back. You really, the goal of every business at some point will be how do you make it predictably grow? And so that's the part I'm in now, because there's different stages to this, of course, but the first thing is making sure you have a product that fits the market, like people actually want it. So I passed that hurdle, thankfully. Now it's figuring out, okay, how much do they want to pay? What's the conversion rates? So that's kind of the stage I'm working through now. But my goal by the end of next year is to have it, probably multi-million-dollar business, but right now I'm debating, do I want investors or not? And so I'm working through some of those details now, but certainly by probably early next year, I'll have that answered by the first quarter. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
That's nice. I wish you luck with that. And I'm sure that 2022 is looking all green and successful for you. So moving on to the final question of the podcast.
Sure.
Any advice or tips that you'd like to share to the small business owners in the audience?
Yeah, well, I hit on some of them before, but I think this time of year is a perfect time to plan. And so this is what I'm actually doing now. So I'll have a much better, if we had this conversation in a month from now, I'd be much more crystal clear on exactly what my goals are. But so I probably gave a horrible example of this, but what I would encourage everyone to do, like towards the end of this year, is really make a plan and say, okay, specifically, here's what I want to grow by how much, and sketch out how you think that might be happening. And even if it doesn't hit, what you want to do is revisit it every quarter and say, okay, what adjustments do I have to make? Do I have to change my expectations? Do I have to change my execution? And that framework I shared before is a great way to do that. So you want to know who is your buyer, what you're going to offer them, how are you going to be different? And then from there, again, here's how I'm going to get new buyers if that's your goal. So me as a startup, that's really what I focus on, because I can't really optimize what's not there. But if you're more established, then you want to really focus on how to get people to buy more frequently and buy more in volume. So that's depending on where you're at. But for me personally, I'm focused on getting new buyers.
Thank you for the great advice, Tony. And I'm sure the audience have a lot to take away from this podcast today. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be here and to talk to me.
Sure.
And yes, yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. Bye.
Bye.